My friend, good morning to all. Today we will describe persecution of Zoroastrians by the Muslims in the Safavid dynasty. Yesterday I told up to Safavid dynasty due to the shortage of space in my appliance, we had to compare to restore the video. So now I will conclude the fourth part of persecution of Zoroastrians. Zoroastrian had difficult time during the Safavid periods and faced repeated persecution and forced conversion. Safavid kings sought to compact them to accept Shia Islam. Sunnis too were forced to convert to Shia or were persecuted, imprisoned, exiled, or killed. Zoroastrians were also branded as impure in addition to being infidels as earlier in the century. So this period also witnesses sporadic campaigns for the conversion of Armenians and the Zoroastrians, focusing blame for the economy and other ills on these and other minorities whose involvement in the spice export, for example, was well known. So you see, the Islam does not respect any cult or religion or even the non-Muslims. Islam is very, very against the non-Muslim or Kafirs, and Islam is very, very against the peace and humanity, and Islam restored only violence and cruelty against the non-Muslims or Kafirs. In the early 16th century, the great Safavid king Shahbaz first settled a number of Zoroastrians in a suburb of his new capital Isfahan. As you are well known or well aware, that Isfahan is the city of the Iran. The suburb of Isfahan where the Zoroastrian lived was called Gabar Mahal, Gabristan or Gabrabad, derived from the word Gabar. You know Gabar? Gobar. Europeans who visited his court left accounts on the Gabars or Gabars, an insulting term used for Zoroastrians by the Muslims, agree on the poverty and simplicity of their lives. Fearing discretion by Muslims, Zoroastrian hide the sacred fire and convert in a newly invented dialect called Dari. Later, Safavid kings were not as tolerant as Shahbaz. Muhammad Baqir Majisi persuaded Sultan Hussein to decree the forcible conversion of Zoroastrians, those who were killed. The clerics or the Muslim scholars are very, very weak person against the non-Muslim or Kafirs. As you saw, the Hamadani, Ali Mir Hamadani, was so wicked and treacherous Sufi saint who tortured the Hindus and Kashmir, and this was the intervention of the Islamic doctrine of violence and brutally against the Kafirs from Mir Ali Hamdani. You should know that the Sufism is not in favor of the humanity. Sufism also inhuman in nature because Sufism the following the same doctrine as followed by the Muslims throughout the world. The accounts in Minokrat written during the Safavid period demonstrate that the Zoroastrians were subjected to harassment by the Shiite majority. Their places of worship were under a constant threat of being destroyed. By 707, when Li Brion visited Isfahan, the Zoroastrians, Brion a Western person, visited Isfahan, the Zoroastrians were to longer able practice their religion freely. He notes that the most deprived Zoroastrian had been brought to Isfahan and had been forced to become Muslims 3 years earlier. In 1821, Khair Porter visiting Isfahan notes that there was hardly any Zoroastrians left in Islam, and Gebrabad was in ruins. This is the treacherousness of the Islamic follower who also devastated the humanity. And even in the open debates on the TV channel, the presenter or anchors or which are uh, executing the anchoring in the TV channel even do not know single ABCD of the Islam. And this is why the open debate on Indian TV channel are the part of only mockery, and there is no truthness in the anchoring of the TV channel debates on Islam. These all the anchors, mainly the women, are never read the Quran or Hadith and the doctrine of Islam, but are screaming about the Islam as they did specialization in the Islamic degrees. So these all debates which are anchoring by these layman anchors on the Indian TV channel are in vacuum, because you see, when ex-Muslim Sahib or an ex-Muslim or any logical person try to disclose the Islamic doctrine of violence, there is a regular interruption by from the side of the anchors on the open TV debates. The only Sudarshan TV is that channel who emphasizes the real debate in context, in context of violence doctrine of Islam. Jar dynasty. This is the another dynasty who incepted from 796 to 1925. A Zoroastrian astrologer named Mustafa Gustav predicted the fall of the Zend dynasty to the Tsar army in Kerman. Because of Gustav's forecast, the Zoroastrians of Khemnan were spared by the conquering army of Aga Muhammad Khan Tsar Khazar. Despite the aforementioned favorable incident, the Zoroastrians during the Khazar dynasty remained a colony and their population continued to decline. Even during the rule of Aga Muhammad Khan, the founder of the dynasty, many Zoroastrians were killed and some were taken as captive to Azerbaijan. Zoroastrians regarded Khazar period as one of their worst, and this is the same Aga Khan dynasty of the Iran. These all are the treacherous and these all are the criminals who were the Muslim are the Muslim as a king or dynasty of the Islamic dynasty are always against the Kafirs, whether they are Christians, they are Hindus, or they are the Christians, they are the Jains, Buddhists, and the Jews also. Many foreign visitors of to Iran of the time of had commented on their pitiful situation. Traveler A. V. W. Jackson noted that Zoroastrians lived in constant fear of persecution by the Muslim extremists, and their lives were in danger whenever the fanatical spirit of the Islam broke out. Oh, it is correct. The Islam approached the fanatics problem, such as in the one witnessed by him in Yashat. According to Edward Brown, the wall of Zoroastrian houses had to be lower than that of the Muslims and prohibited from making their houses with distinctive signs. Zoroastrians were forbidden from erecting new houses and repairing old ones. Various methods were used to proceed, proselytize the minorities according to a law. If any member of the family converted to Islam, he or she was entitled to all inheritance, the all property. They were forbidden from taking up lucrative occupations. The community was regarded as outcast, impure, and untouchable. The Zoroastrian and their food was considered impure, and many public places refused to serve them. When they supported in the bazaar, they were not allowed to touch any food or fruits. They were threatened with forced conversion, beaten up, and fled, and their religious sanctuaries were regularly desecrated. Harassment and persecutions were the norms of daily life. Zoroastrians were often attacked and beaten by Muslims in the streets. The murder of Zoroastrians were not punished. Murder, murder, murders. At times, Zoroastrians girls were kidnapped and forcibly converted and married to Muslims and even were raped as per the Islamic doctrine. Islamic doctrine does not prohibit the rape with the kafir woman, and this is the prime aim of the Muslims to go in heaven, that they must rape with the kafir woman and loot their wealth. Christians were subjected to public discrimination through dress regulation, not allowed to wear new or white clothes, and compelled by enactment to wear the dull yellow raiment already alluded to as a distinguishing badge. They were not allowed to wear overcoats but were compelled to wear long robes called kaba and cotton kiva on their feet even in winter. Wearing eyeglasses, long cloth, trousers, hat, boots, socks, winding their turbans tightly and neatly, carrying watching or rings were all forbidden to Zoroastrians. During the rainy days, they were not allowed to carry umbrellas or to appear in public because the water that had run down through their bodies and clothes would pollute the Muslims. Zoroastrian men in Yazd would carry a large shawl that they would place under their feet when visiting a Muslim's home as to prevent the carpet from the being polluted. Forbidden for riding horses and only allowed to ride mules or donkeys. Upon facing a Muslim, they had to dismount. The general prosecution against Zoroastrians riding horse and donkey was lifted by Raja Shah in 1923. The Shah dynasty, very progressive dynasty, and now presently, due to the fanaticism in Iran, the Shah Raza Pahlavi compelled to migrate and to take to asylum in United States of America. Now their family is residing in United States of America. The king of Iran, Shah Raza Pahlavi. On top of all the misery, the Zoroastrian had to pay a heavy religious tax known as Shia. This is the extortion tax, or this is the Gunda tax, which was propagated by Prophet Muhammad Sahib himself. Zoroastrian sources record the method of extracting this as designated to humiliate the dhimmis, the tax person who was compelled to stand while the officer received the money sat on a high throne. Upon receiving the payment, the officer gave the dhimmi a blow on the neck and draw him roughly away. The public was entitled to watch the spectacle. Arab tax collectors would mock Zoroastrian to wearing kusti, a such type of dress, and would rip off hanging the cord around the necks of their beleaguered faithful. Due to corruption of the tax officials at time twice and even three times the official figure would be collected, because this is every immediately had to receive his share. If the families could not afford paying the jizya tax, their children were beaten and even tortured, and their religious books were thrown in thrown in the. This is how the term the bookless came about under the woeful conditions. Some had to convert, and there were those who declared themselves Muslims, picked up Islamic names, but in secret continued Zoroastrian practices. Today, the latter group among the Zoroastrians is known as Jadid, in response to the prosecution and segregation policies, the Zoroastrian commonly became closed, introverted, and static. Means they are much in pressure and they are in much depression. This is the treacherousness and this is the cruelty of Islam of every kafir or non-Muslims. Zoroastrian massacre did not cease during the Khazar rule. The last two are recorded at the villages surrounding the city of Borazan and Turkabad near Yazd. Today, the village of Mol Sayyid, all near Borazan, among the local people is known as killing site, Ghati Koho, and Zoroastrian surnames of the Turki, Turkian and Turkabadi reflect lineage to the survivors of Turkabad in the 1850s. Comet of Gobineau, the French ambassador to Iran, wrote only 6,000 of them are left, and just a miracle may save them from extinction. These are the descendants of the people who one day ruled the world. What a tragedy! What a what a treacherous job by the Muslim throughout the world against the Kafirs. And this doctrine, the Islamic doctrine, very, 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 very dictatorship and very, very fanatics against the non-Muslims or against the humanity or very, very inhuman nature. Due to the extent of oppression and destitution, many Zoroastrians ventured to the hazardous journey to India. Those who could not afford the voyage abroad, the ships risked their lives for crossing the hostile deserts or donkeys or even on foot. In India, they were recognized for sadre and kusti and were sheltered by their Parsi brethren. There, they found the second major Indian Zoroastrian community known as Iranis, as Aruna Irani, Bowman Irani. These are all Parsis. Our Parsi brethren, sir. We have to protect them, all the Zoroastrian. This is the duty of Hindus, the majority of Hindus, that we will protect our brethren, Zoroastrians. Zoroast- Emissaries to Iran. When the news of their plight reached the Parsis, who by this time had become quite prosperous, Parsi funds were set up to help the Iranian Zoroastrians and emissaries were dispatched to Iran. A Parsi philanthropist, Manekji Limzi Hatana, was sent to help them. He found only 7,711 Zoroastrian in Keman, Yazan, and Tehran, now the capital of Iran. Using his influence with the British government, the managed to get some of repression against Zoroastrians removed. Jizya was paid by the Zoroastrian minority until 1852, when it was removed by the pressure on the Khazar government from the Persian Zoroastrian emulation of fund. The Zoroastrian Trust Fund of Europe also attempted to alleviate the condition of their Irani brethren. Both Dadabhai Nauroji, as you know, a politician of India, and Mukherjee Bhavnagiri as president of the Zoroastrian Trust Fund of Europe and member of the Parliament, addressed the House of the Commons of the United Kingdom on the issue of the persecution of Zoroastrian in Iran. On the sixth occasion, Shah Nasir al-Din Shah Qajar visited London. Parsi delegation from the ZTFE, the Zoroastrian Trust Fund of Europe, were present to advocate for their Iranian co-religionists suffering the intense persecution of the Khazar dynasty. Islamic Republic of Iran, 1979 to present. Present. The 1979 Islamic Revolution was quietly equally traumatic to the remaining Zoroastrian and their numbers reduced drastically immediately after the revolution during Bazargan's premiership. Muslims revolutionaries walked into an main Zoroastrian fire temple in Tehran and removed the portrait of Prophet Zoroaster and replaced it with one of the Ayatollah Khomeini. However, just like the Armenian, Assyrian, and the Persian Jewish community, Zoroastrians are officially recognized as on the grounds of 1906 constitution allocated one seat in the Iranian parliament, currently held by Essenadyar Ekhtiyar Kasanaviha. Outmarriage and low birth rates affect the growth of Iran Zoroastrian population, which according to Iran 212 census stood 25,271, though this represented an increase of 27.5% on the 206 population. In 213, Sepenta Nikem was elected to the city council of Aziazad and became the first Zoroastrian councillor in Iran. So you see what is the pitiable, pathetic story of the operation of the Zoroastrians or the Parsis by the fanatic Muslims. And you see, the Vaman Mishra and many other so-called Dalit leaders are criticizing the Sanatan Vedic Dharma, but they never seen about the persecution of Zoroastrians. The Zoroastrians were untouchable in the reign of the Muslim kingdom in Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan because Islam cannot digest or absorb the non-Muslims or Kafirs. And this is why, even though these so-called scheduled caste people of India want to make a coalition with Asuddin Owaisi and other like-minded violent Islamic doctrine party cannot be united because for the Muslim leaders, all the Dalits are also kafir. Whether no matter whether they are Muslims or whether they are Buddhist or Muslim, Hindus or Jain or Sikhs, all are kafirs. Every non-Muslim is kafir and was baqatal, suitable to kill. Otherwise, he have to convert in Islam. This is the treacherous and human nature of the Islam. What Nupur Sharma described on the TV channel in open debate was correct as per Buddhist hadith. But you see, when Zakir Naik told this description on his Peace TV channel, then there was no hue and cry from the Muslims. But even Nupur Sharma stated the same. There is a lot of hue and cry throughout the world. This is due to only because to hide out the treacherous cruelty and brutality of Islam and inhuman nature of Islamic doctrine which was committed by Prophet Muhammad Sahib and their companions known as Sahaba against the Jews tribes just like as Banu Qurayza. The Banu Qurayza people were slaughtered by the Prophet Muhammad Sahib and his army and their women were distributed among the Muslims just like the toys or the commodities and enslaved the children of the Jews. This is this is why the people who are screaming against the Nupur Sharma is only the their aim is only to divert the mention of the inhuman nature from the inhuman nature of the Islam and its blood blood path history of the Islam. So there is lot of lacunas in the Quranic verses which allow killing the kafirs and so many lacunas in hadith. On that time when Prophet Muhammad Sahib was alive, they thought that this will be not disclosed in future. But the Prophet Sahib didn't knew that in the next coming centuries there will be a uh, uh, there will be a uh, uh, revolution in the field of the communication known as communication revolution. And due to this revolution, the all Islamic doctrine of the violence and the killing of the kafirs and the robbery of the Islamic followers at the time Muhammad Sahib by his companions are now disclosing by so many people on the YouTube. It is clear fact. If there is no humility in any cult, that the that that cult not is not a good cult or the correct way for the humility. Rather, such type of cult is inhuman in nature, and you see everywhere they are abusing the Zoroastrians, the Jews, the Hindus, and all Kafirs due to only this violent theory of Islam against the Kafirs. And there is a lollipop given by Prophet Muhammad Sahib that there is a heaven to the Muslims and hell to the non-Muslims or Kafirs. This is the lollipop, and this lollipop is being sucked by my Muslim or Mu'min brothers since inception of Islam. They have a lollipop of heaven, and they are suckling the lollipop of heaven, and they are very happy that the people who are kafirs will not go enter in the heaven, but they will the dwellers of the hell. This is the stupidity of the thought process of these peoples who do not know what is going on in this world due to the scientific miracles. The miracles in sense of reality, not just like miracles and the in Quran as the miracle to come down the book by the hand of the angel Jabrail. You see, according to Quran, the Jibril or the angels have no voice, have no hand, have no eyes. They are only the glittering object. How the Jibril can take take a paper or a voice from the God? That Allah, who has no mouth, no hand, how he can write with pens, or how he can told to Jibril his doctrine and sent to the Prophet Muhammad Sahib. So this is very dubious. It is very confusing that this book Quran is either sky book or sent down by the so-called Allah or by the through the Jibril angel, or it is only a fabricated or fairy tale story to only deceiving or cheating the my mommy brothers to to throw them into wilderness or in the jungle of stupidity. In the last, I would like to say, my Muslim brethren or Muslim brothers, please use logics and use the brain and open your eyes. This doctrine that Allah, which allows the killing the non-Muslim, is Almighty or is kind-hearted? No and never. Because Almighty cannot be cruel that He allowed the killing of the non-Muslims. Though, according to Quran, Allah created all the universe and all the uh, uh, living organisms, even mountain, river, cities. Then why He allowed to kill all the non-Muslims or kafir? This created some suspension in the brain of any logical person. So we must think with rationality, not religiously, and we cannot kill anybody on this base that in Quran it has been described or written by the Allah that the kafir is just suitable killing and their women or kafir women just suitable to do rapes and enslave and distributed to the among the Muslim soldiers. Suppose if Indian army will lose the battle in 1971, certainly the Hindu women must to be distributed among the Muslim soldiers as per the Islamic doctrine. So this Islamic doctrine is very, very against the United Nation Organization Charter of Humanity. And I am amazing that why these Islamic country who have no respect to the humanity according to Islamic doctrine are the member of the human right committees. So the United Nations organization must suspend all Arabic country from the human rights committees because they are very, very inhuman in nature because they are following the same doctrine which is very, very inhuman against the Kafirs or the non-Muslims. In the last, I would like to say, please subscribe my channel. Thank you. Vande Mataram. Jai Hind.